Welcome, everybody, again to the Type Thursday Book Club. This week, we are reading The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. 3 professional designers review one book under 5 criteria. We read the book privately. We do not know what each of us rated the book. We're going to find out live, just like with you, what our ratings are. I'm Thomas Jockin. I'm the founder of Type Thursday, and I am joined by my great hosts and guests, Michael Mondragon and Matheo Cadena, from Type Thursday Los Angeles and Type Thursday Phoenix. Matheo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Thomas. Excited to dig in.
Are you doing well too? You doing well too, Michael?
Doing really good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about reviewing this book. This is one I've wanted to do for quite a long time.
So, before we begin, what the font is Type Thursday? It's a meeting place for people who love type. It's a community of creatives passionate about typography and design. We have monthly meetups where people come and show their work in progress typeface and letter form projects. Anything using fonts or typefaces, letter forms. Welcome to Type Thursday. It's an opportunity for you to network and learn from industry professionals, make some friends, and have a great time. And it actually works out that next week is Type Thursday in person for both Phoenix and LA. We'll talk more about that later. So this week we're reading the influential book, Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. It's a little unusual considering we're a letter form typography group, but I think there were some insightful things about this book. And we're going to find out under our 5 criteria we use for our reviews. For those who don't know, we have 5 criteria: clarity of concepts, visual inspiration, practical application, typographic insight, and lastly, overall impact. So as I said in the opening, we rated this individually. We do not know what we rated it as. And the whole fun of the event tonight is that we're going to reveal our ratings using our great scoreboard, and we can transition to that, and we'll have a discussion based on our ratings. So we rotate who goes first, and I volunteered to go first this time. So I'm going to jump on in for clarity of concepts. So I gave this a 3. Here's my reasoning why. The book's biggest strength is vocabulary. Norman really gave us a design language that has lasted, and it's still used today. It's in fact, we take it for granted. The main idea is affordances, that object suggests, enables, or frustrates a use. Once we learn that, you start seeing that concept everywhere: doors, handles, switches, menus, interfaces. And in fact, there's a shorthand now where we say there's Norman doors. A door that tells you the push when you should pull. That kind of friction of event is named after Don Norman, and that's because that's what he mentioned in the chapter in the book. What gives this framework an even stronger point, because I read this before the revision edition, is his emphasis of signifiers. So it's not just about what an object can do, it's about what cues it gives a user. So these concepts are very memorable and very useful, and I think this is very important for design practice. But why a 3? And the reason why is because the parts are often way stronger than the wholes, in my opinion. The ideas are clear, but the book feels a little more assembled than integrated. And that's my reason why I give it a 3. Matheo, you're up next.
Yeah. Nice review, Thomas. For me, with the Design of Everyday Things, the very first time I read this book, I fell in love because I felt like no one had explained, why all these things in life suck as bad as they do. And we blame ourselves when something goes wrong. Don Norman does a really good job, in my opinion, of clearly explaining why it's not our fault. It's actually the designer's fault. It's the engineer's fault. It's manufacturing. It's a lot of times we're trying to make things easier for process, or computers, but not make them easier for people. So I love this book. Clarity of concepts, for me, I landed right smack at a 5, a solid 5 on this one, because I thought he did a great job explaining every subject that is approached in the book.
Yeah, so I'm going to be right in the middle, but probably leaning a little bit closer to Matheo here. I'm probably going to go 4.5 here. And the reason why I do, the concepts are exceptionally clear. And, the mental models, the feedback, all those little things that go into design, they're described perfectly. And one of I've kind of remembered, it's a saying I use, but I don't know where I came up with it or where I heard it before, but great design is invisible. And, in this book, it reminded me of just that. And again, when in my career, when I started getting into UI UX, or user experience, I really had no real kind of background in it. And I really didn't, when I was working as an artist, I never really thought about the artist or the consumer. I always thought about making the art. So this was this book, which I've been wanting to read for a long time, and I'm really glad I did, gave me a lot of these points that I had come across, and I wish I would have come across it a lot sooner. But a 4.5 for me.
Yeah, I think the big difference here is I don't disagree that the individual chapters are really clear. They're very clear, individual chapters. I think for me, the biggest issue was there were two, and I'll talk more about this in I think in other sections, is how did the ideas connect with each other? So for example, a big one is idea in the head versus idea in the world. Like he has an entire, like he just is going on. I get it. It's super clear. But then I think he does make attempts to try to connect it to the other chapters, but it was a little touch and go about it. And I know if I'm having a touch and go about that connection, especially when you're stacking out with this area of mistakes and errors, again, all these as individual chapters are really great ideas. But then if you ask the question, how do mistakes and errors interact with each other with ideas in the head versus ideas in the world, and how do those interact with the foreign assistant signifiers? It's a lot of complexity. It's actually it's actually a very sophisticated account that I know if I asked students to answer this question, they would have a hard time on making those distinctions. So I'm only saying that I don't disagree that the individual chapters are really clear. I think they're really outstanding. It's just a matter of the integration of everything so that a designer would know how to use this in their practice. I think that's where the trip up I can imagine being. But I can disagree. You can challenge me on these points, but that's just my take from it.
Well, Thomas, I'm challenging you, buddy, because for me, when I first was starting my career learning UX, UI, web design, because my bachelor's degree is in web design, but when I was studying, it was at that era where, UX was just blowing up. So you couldn't read about really anything online without reading about UX and UI. And there was a lot of like articles that I had read and people explaining the concepts, but very vaguely so. And not being clear enough, right? Because it was just this, like emerging field that no one had a grip on yet. It felt like. So when I picked up the design of everyday things and I started reading this book, I was like, holy hell, this is the exact clarity that I have been asking for in sort of all of these subjects of like understanding just like basic signifiers, and then the difference between certain concepts too, and anti-affordances, things like that. I was like, I love these concepts that he brings up because mentally we're, hitting a lot of roadblocks as people, as we interact with computers or doors, for example, that don't open the right way. But he kind of clearly explains why that's, again, not our fault as the user, but the fault of the designer or the engineer, especially coming from a background where I worked in an agency for a while, and the IT team of the agency would always blame the user. They'd be like, oh, it's a user error for every little glitch that in the system, and when we're doing file sharing or when we're trying to collaborate and something crashes. And ultimately, it's the engineers who designed it that just are too lazy to go and code a fix, or the lack of user testing and research to understand why it errors out so often. So I thought the clarity of concepts from where I was coming from in my career, and then reading this again the second time around, just kind of like reinforced a lot of these ideas that were not clearly explained in the past in other readings that I had seen in this industry.
Yeah, I feel like technology is going to be where it's going to be kind of weak here. But I feel like everything that it explained made total sense. And I'm a history guy. I love knowing about the history of things. So things that, why they were designed the way that they're designed to be where they are now or where they've evolved was always interesting to me. So I don't think there's any way any of this could have kept up with technology. So, but it can be applied to technology, and that's where I feel that it does have a lot of use and a lot of strengths.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably move on. But the big note I would say is that there's a lot of great insights in the individual chapters. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think just on that note, I think the idea of the Swiss cheese model, basically like I think it was really insightful for me was that explanation of like, why is aviation so safe? Like, considering humans are so dumb, we make so many mistakes. How are we so safe in the air? And the reason why is redundancy, right? Basically processes of redundancy. And that's what she's model of like how the basically interactions all overlap with each other. Even really simple things like the checklist of having one person read it out loud and the other person does it. And you have to do it that way. You cannot bypass it. So again, there's really great insights about this. I am not disagreeing with that as a general point. I think it's just so the connection of the points is where the tension shows up in this text, in my opinion. But I'll grant that again, in terms of compared to online, much clarity, way better. There's times when reading books is so much better than reading articles online. And this is one of those examples. I would agree with that.
Yeah, well said. Michael, the history buff in the room. Woo!
All right, so visual inspiration. All right, so I feel like I have a weird feeling my vibe is Mr. Rough Curmudgeon reviewer today. This guy got a 2. The reason why, again, when I say about visual inspiration, this is in the context of how we're rating this to the other books. This is not a portfolio book. You're not coming in to get dazzled by great work and a great execution of layout and all that good stuff. It's not a visually exciting book, but his visuals do help explain its point. So that is valid. That's why it's not a 1. Like, it is useful. You will be inspired to think through the ideas of this book by what's been shown you visually in this text, but you're not going to get like bamboozled with amazement of, let's say, Ken Barber, for example. It gives you a lot to think about, but not much to look at, if I had to summarize the point.
I was just looking and flipping through the book to kind of just re-up on the visuals. And I mean, there's not a lot of visuals in this book. I mean, this is what you get. And there's not a lot of these even. These black and white images. This is one of those famous references that he has where he breaks down how to the building and ingenuity of this like Lego set building a police motorcycle and how it was designed so well. I really loved that particular. I thought that was so clear. But visually, oh my gosh, I'm rating this book a solid. You're gonna see over here, get my face loaded in. I'm leaving a solid 1 on visual inspiration.
Going hard, Matheo.
I'm going hard on this one, guys, and I have to because even the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is not a visual book either, there was plenty of graphs and different breakdowns that helped aid in the visual learning. And I'm a huge visual learner. So just a wall of text is like the hardest thing for my brain to be able to interpret and keep in long-term memory. With these concepts as rich as they are, I really think there's a lot of room for a ton of visual aids, whether they be diagrams or photographs. And he puts some photographs in there and some diagrams. We get a couple of those, but they're just not used enough, and with how in depth he goes and to the design of everyday things and like user experience, like I would think you'd have some visuals to match, but that just didn't happen here. And as a design book, I was kind of disappointed on that end.
Yeah, I wanted to make this like right in the middle, but I think that more fairly is probably a 2.5 for me. I was glad that there was some, something in there, but it's not a visually driven book at all. It's about the thinking and not the aesthetics. And, you're not going to walk away from this book and go, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired to go create something. So in that case, going by the rubric, it actually, it falls below the scale, but I'm glad that there was some, some visuals to kind of back up the thinking. And at least there was something in there. There's something actually more egregious, I think, that we're going to talk about later. That is actually the thing that actually kind of really tripped me up visually in this. But as far as visual inspiration, 2.5 is my score.
Unfortunately, I think we're all in consensus. I'm a little surprised. I guess I thought I was being a little hard with the 2, but Matheo coming strong. We can move on down.
Sure.
Going in hard.
All right. So practical application. Now, this is where the book really matters. This is like, I think the ideas Norman talks about helps us see that, as Matheo said, confusion is often not the user's fault. It's design's fault. I think that's one of the major takeaways. Like who owns the responsibility for errors the presumption should not be it's the user's fault. The presumption should be it's the designer's. I think that's a huge heuristical shift that's very important to do. So for that reason alone, in one sense, it's a 5 because of that. I would want to put it a 5 because of that, especially once you learn about ideas like affordances, signifiers, feedback, and mapping, right? As Michael said, you really start reading the design world differently. So again, it's like am I giving this a 5? But here's the problem. If I gave this book for my students and asked them to apply the concepts directly without any hand-holding or any kind of scaffolding or any kind of like intervention by me as an educator, absolutely not. No, it wouldn't do it. They would need exercises. They would need assignments that kind of help them interpret what Norman's saying to the design practice. So for that reason, it gets hit. I'm penalizing it for that reason in terms of application of designers using this book. I don't think the book itself is going to do it. You're going to need you need a teacher to help you interpret it, to give you an assignments that would apply these concepts, or you need a supplemental book, a book that takes I'm not sure, I'm not a UX UI guy, so I can't comment, but it almost like needs to be a diviner who takes what Norman wrote about and then says, here are UX UI exercises or design exercises that apply this. And that's in a really direct application to UX UI. If we want to go more abstractly, typography, again, I guess even more, I think you need scaffolding educators to help you interpret this book for boots on the ground, to put it that way. It's all for me.
Nicely put there, Thomas. I think you're spot on there. If you're going to hand this to a student, they just would not be able to put it into practical application right away. There's so much information here, but that is extremely probably overwhelming for some. Because I had the background in graphic design and web design, and then I was coming into this book and I was reading already about user experience design, user interface design, human-computer interaction. I had a strong foundation. So I was able to, once I first read through this, put it to practice in the startup company that I was working for, building out UIs for them. And also it helped me explain myself much better to the engineers, to the front-end developers, the back-end developers, and help them kind of get in alignment with why these things would matter more. So I was able to kind of get the stakeholders on the board as well with like the design decisions that were being made and why. So for me, the practical application, I'm landing myself right at a solid 4. I think it is able to put it into practice this is one step of many in your design journey. Like if you just pick this book up today, no, you're not going to be able to apply it. You still need other books in the process to be able to apply this, that you need to combine this with, to be able to put this to practice.
Yeah, I am going to 100% agree with that. I'm going to put this at a 4. I think it's, highly applicable, but it won't tell you exactly, how to design. And I also think there's a bit of education. That is absolutely true. But also a little bit of life experience about using things, like probably in my younger years, I wouldn't care how a teapot worked. But now I had a friend who was actually super into teapots and actually showed me other ones from like Europe, and then I see ones in China and Japan, how they're made with such craft. And there's actually little nuances to it. And I don't think I would have noticed that before. And I think that that's where this book really kind of helps define that and what I'm actually looking for in design and how I can take that practical thinking to my work and how I can connect with users as well.
I was going to ask for those, again, if some of us here have more UX, UI backgrounds, is there a book that's basically that intermediate deviator, that kind of like interprets what Norman wrote to give to like for a UX, UI background, or even just general design application of it? I'm just curious.
So there's the big project book on UX design, and it kind of is like this huge collection of like, here's all the tools as a UX designer you're going to use throughout your career, and here's some worksheets and some additional reading. And it kind of tries to be a bridge between all the different materials out there, and it references Don Norman's book in it as well. Again, I feel like if you started there, it would still be very overwhelming in your journey. what Don Norman may have done is with the Nielsen Norman Group, he's used his website for many years and published tons of articles and blogs and writings. Now podcasts, they've launched a podcast that's really taking off to be supplemental learning, to sort of try to bridge the gap between this book, The Design of Everyday Things, and what's happening now in the market. So if you were ever to go to the Nielsen Norman Group website, it's a wonderful resource. I mean, that website is almost like a book and it's got tons of examples and worksheets and downloads and follow-alongs. I think that's a solid bridge. So like Martina Floor did with her The Golden Secrets of Lettering, she gave you a lot of online resources through her website that could pair with the book. I think Don Norman's pretty much done that through the Nielsen Norman Group.
Yeah, and there's another writer that I follow. His name is Luke Wrobleski, Wrobleski, and he wrote Mobile First, and it's one of the first books that I kind of read about UI UX. But also he has a lot of great articles, and he also keeps current. And he's one of those guys who will take screenshots of like the first OS and then watch how it evolves. I just love watching that progression, and especially with devices and stuff like that. It's ever evolving. So again, it's like one of those things like AI now. It's hard to keep up with.
Okay, I'm just glad that apparently I do follow those resources. So good. I'm glad to know that I'm in the know. So I appreciate that. Very
Love
good.
it.
Okay, so we can proceed forward. All right, so typographic insight. So this is not a typography book, and that was kind of the opening points. Like, what are we going to say about the book, a non-typography book on a letter form book club? Well, it's not a typography book, but the ideas really travel well. I think mostly because of that addition of signifiers. That's a huge deal. Which, if I remember reading this, the first edition of this book. I don't think it had this. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong about that point, but for some reason, my memory is telling me I read the revised edition for this review. Signifiers weren't there, so I think this rating would be very different if that wasn't there. But because signifiers is talked about and actually very important for this text, it means that typography's ideas of hierarchy, contrast, spacing, grouping, alignment all apply. That means signifiers all apply because they guide the reader. But I got to say this, and I know I'm going to steal the thunder because I went first from the group. That typesetting in this book is whack, straight up. So there's this weird outdent subhead that gets swallowed by the gutter. It's just a bizarre decision. I don't understand it. It's one of those things I look at and go, what happened here? What was the reasoning of this? So with that said, the book is interesting partly because it teaches the great principles, but it's just kind of bizarre from a usability perspective of typographic norms and just a use case of like how type will respond to the immaterial existence of binding in the gutter. It doesn't respond to it. It doesn't take acknowledgement of that at all. It's just crazy. So for that reason, that like, I know it seems a little ridiculous, but because that's such a significant part, I maybe I'm a little too generous with it, but I gave it a 3 for those reasons.
Thomas, that's extremely generous, considering considering the typographic layout in this book is absolutely whack. I agree with you 100%. So the last time we were together, I showed you guys, I was super excited to show you guys the index. And this is the index, I believe, in this book, and it's not exciting at all. It's the most boring thing to look at. The last one that we looked at, Ken Barber, House Industries, that was an index. That was a table of contents. Oh God, it was beautiful. There's other pages here that are just, I mean, this is basically the whole book as a typographic layout. You've got the paragraph blocks of text, and then you've got these little headings that are guiding you throughout. But you're right, there's this right alignment heading style that he chose that just kind of hits weird, visually. It just sort of jumps out and breaks the layout. And I think he could have explored more of the typographic fun, and probably the last cool thing that I thought I saw was this right here. So this was like a fun typographic thing, just playing with punctuation, right? And then even these are so boring, the chapters pages. So yeah, I think as a designer and as a book in the design industry, I really wish he had worked with a great book designer instead of just maybe the fast-paced publishing and just throwing it in a text. I think what we see here is like Don Norman himself is not a visual designer. He's definitely on the research side, right, and leadership side. So he's a thought leader, and he's an amazing researcher, very good at explaining and communicating. But when it comes to visuals, I'm like, no. It's just even the cover. I'm just like, I'm not enthralled by this. So for me, typographic insight, you're going to see my reveal as we slide in over here. And again, I'm a solid 1, guys.
Whoa. Okay. So, when I first was trying to read this and I saw, all those typographic things, and I think that this is a perfect example of why we're so passionate about typography. The reason that we're here talking about this is because we have a mutual love for typography. I'm going to give this a 2, and I believe I'm being very generous as well. It wasn't the worst I've ever seen because I actually work with self-publishers, and seeing some of, with justified text that they'll use, and, there's no convention at all. I feel like this book was redesigned somehow, and I think that they didn't look at it. Honestly, I don't know if they refloated or if this was carried on, because I have the revised edition as well. So, is it ironic or a coincidence that a design book is not designed well for type?
It's super lame. No, I mean, and I'm gonna push back on one point, Matteo. I say this, but what about the concepts of this text in terms of giving insight for typography?
Okay, like if we look at typography and typesetting from a usability standard, then maybe you can take some of these lessons here and apply those to typographic application. But you really have to make a jump. That's a stretch, I feel like, to apply.
Well, no, what I meant was like the ideas of signifiers, right? Or the idea of affordances and how things get told. I meant just the concepts themselves, not the. Again, I'm not disagreeing. Like, part of the reason why I'm penalizing it so hard in this area is because of how badly typeset it is. It's not demonstrating its principles very well. But those principles in and of themselves, that's the reason I think they do have epigraphic. I think typographers will get insights. I think things like the biggest violation, in my opinion, is that the idea of norms, right? People have behavioral psychological norms that affects the affordances of things. So you got to work with that in terms of how the community or audience interacts with the object. But yet this typesetting is doing the exact opposite with no payoff. So I'm just like, that's my only pushback, though. I agree with you. We should be penalized for that. But I think my intention is, but his ideas are great. His application just sucks.
No, you make a good point there, and you were right about the first edition did not include signifiers, which is like on a screen, or like seeing something that signifies a message to the user, and so that was missing. So the revised edition, he does state in his revised edition, I've come back to revise this book and added these in as we're interacting with more iPads and touch screens and phones, and touch screens are evolving to expand even beyond this, and computer interfaces and stuff. So that was a necessary add. And then the concepts, like you said, like approaching something as like people have a standard of normal. If you break that, if you deviate too strong and you invent something new, people aren't going to adopt it. That's what he tells you. People are going to resist the adoption of change. And the same could go for letter forms. If you push a letter form too far past the standard, it's not going to be recognizable as a letter form. So I think that is some typographic insight that could like a way that you can kind of translate this there.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you something, and I'm glad to have both of you here to ask this question. I'm going to solo myself. What do you think about like I'm looking on the right-hand page here, long paragraphs that can be broken up, and I feel like
a huge block of text, a wall of text on the
right. So it's like one continuous big thought, and it's not broken up into more. When you're reading, breaking them up and kind of understanding a little better. And I think breaking it up would help that readability as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, beyond even just a straight up just typographic visual effect, it's just the thought process. You should get a little nervous. Like, what kind of line of thought is going on continuously for maybe, what is that, 150 to 200 words? Like, to be that a huge block of thought that it requires no division or no break is a little suspicious. What content is that? Mind me asking, Michael?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me look back. I'll have to look. I literally put my thumb in the book to get a big paragraph. And it might have been the psychology. Oh no. Yeah, the psychology of everyday actions. That was it.
Yeah.
So talking about the
whole
tasks, goals, and intentions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The short answer again on the issue of like having imagine junior designers getting told to go read this book, and then you come run into that. It's not gonna be a good time.
Right.
It's not gonna be a good time for anyone involved.
Yeah. I feel like this whole book is just walls and walls of text, just like that. And I think that's where I'm like, we need to break that up. You know,
honestly, I audiobooked this one. I had the print copy. I also audiobooked. It was not a bad experience, audiobook. So
audiobook,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I did the audiobook this as well with the reading, and I was like, yeah, it works the audiobook wise.
But there definitely was moments in the audiobook, and this is why I think it really is a content editing question, not just a visual question. They're related. They're very deeply related. It's because there were moments in the audiobook I really was fading out. Like I straight up just went into a full haze of like, what? Where am I?
Yeah.
So it's not just the typographic setting of it; it's the very thought process of Norman. Sometimes I think he just I think also does happen when you have a revised edition. You probably got a lot more leeway from his editor to just write, and his editor didn't have as much sway to tell him, "Hey, this is a little long on the tooth. Let's tighten this up a little bit." Or can we get a little more clear about what you're trying to say with this? Or do you think this much of exposition is required to make your point? So a little hypothetical suggestion on that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
onward.
With you in the haze thing, there was a couple of times where I hit with so much information that you're just like, wait, what? Yeah. That's why reading and listening again is so necessary with this because it's long.
Yeah. All right. Overall impact. Let's close it out. So as you saw, it's not flawless, not visually rich. It's not above critique, as we just discussed right now, but it changed the field. No one can deny it. Like it's the kind of thing where it's like, how best to put this? It's basically like, okay, we all know we will be reviewing Bringhurst. Like we tell everyone, if we want to get really in a good, really great typesetting, like know how to be a really great typographer in a typesetting perspective in the book typography tradition, it's Bringhurst. You're telling them to go to Bringhurst, and yeah, they're going to cry about it, but it's got to get done. I do feel like this book is of a similar category. So it gives us durable concepts. It makes the everyday frustrations legible to us in a way we didn't see before. I think actually even people who are in design get a lot of value from this book because you think, oh, wait, this whole part of my reality that I just thought had to be this way could be otherwise. That's very insightful and gave designers a better language for talking about usability. So for me, it's not perfect, but it is foundational. So for those reasons, it gets a 4.
Very well said, Thomas. I was looking at the book right now because there's just so many moments of rich, deep insight. And the first time I read this book, and again reading it the second time, it has changed the way that I look at the world and interact with the devices and technology and everything, not just phones and computers, but doors and refrigerators. And there's a great example where he goes in to talk about the refrigerator dial and it being so just poorly designed, and that whole story he tells about that device and how you change a setting and there's just absolutely no way of knowing if it's working or not, and he breaks that down. And that the motorcycle example and a lot of other examples that just change the industry and the way that we work. So this is a source text in UX design, UI design. If you're in that field and you're designing technologies, you're a product designer, you need to definitely go to the source text and get the source, And for me, that's why I put overall impact as a solid 5, because it's also had that lasting relevance. I mean, he wrote this years back, and it's still relevant to this day, despite being written, back in time. And as we know with books now and technology, most stuff you put out is expired in 2 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm also going to put it at a 5. And do I have to put this behind you? This book, there's a reason why we reviewed this book, because it's the go-to, for this type of thinking. And I feel like this is where this book, really dominates the conversation. It definitely reshaped how I thought about design and responsibility, usability, even human behavior. And I've seen things like this before, but I feel like this is the book, if I were to suggest it to someone, that, what actually is design? What does it mean? What's the intangible part of design? And believe me, I've had to explain to people what design is and isn't. And also, I always took it personally, because I always said, like, whenever I design something, if it's wrong, it's my fault. And I used to always kind of hate being in that position, but I think it's an opportunity, and it's okay to be wrong as long as you iterate on it. And I think that this book actually talks about, like the responsibility of, what it is to be a designer in the world, to put things in the world that are not only good, but useful and helpful. And you'd be surprised, even what we were talking about, the typography, legibility, accessibility. They used to be just talking points and people didn't care about them. Now it's crucial. And especially in my teaching, like, they're hammering us, because now it's regulatory. It's a part of the state that, that it needs to be compliant. So I think that that's where this book shines.
It's so interesting, because I feel like books like basically this movement of human-centered design, right? That kind of a big idea that Norman's presenting in this text. It's the antithesis of the fine art tradition that, I don't know about you guys, but in my art training, design training, that was the source origin, which is like enemy number one for Norman, like the modernist, brutalist architecture, product design, where we need it by making everything super pure geometry of slickness, like really alienating to human persons. So I find it interesting that kind of hold in our thought that there's almost these two traditions, kind of an antagonistic stance in our field. And I find that very interesting. How do you guys feel about that?
No, I think that's, again, I became an artist to create things and really show my expression. But working as an artist, I feel like there is a responsibility, especially when you're, working with clients, but ultimately the customer. So, but I also feel in my teaching, like, I feel a responsibility to teach others, at least to have that mentality, but then expand on it with your creativity. So, like, they both can coexist. And there's a reason, I remember one of my first mentors saying that everything that you see in your room, in a restaurant, anywhere, has been designed. And there was an intentional design about it. So I think that, to put something else in the world, it has to meet those standards as well. Not everything is great.
Yeah, Thomas, I think you brought up a really good point, that, the whole, this art source is like do it for the beauty. And there's I think a couple examples he talks about with, where doors and glass windows are so seamlessly designed that people walk into them and hurt themselves. And so it's like, yes, it's beautiful, but then, okay, people are hurting themselves and it's causing injury. So why wouldn't we change that? Because it's ugly. So it's an interesting thing that he's attacking there. And yeah, I think I think when I was coming up and getting my education in design, it's like this was a buzz. The whole UX field was starting to be just such a huge buzz online that everything was less about art and more about now usability and being human-centered. And in a simple example, like, I had a water bottle that was just a single straight shape, and then I got this new one that from Adobe that they gave us, that they handed out, and it's got little ergonomical bends to it. And when I was hiking and like had to hold it in my arm, those that little curvature just allowed it to like snugly fit in my arm. Whereas like the other one, I was like, it was hurting me because it was just a plain shape. So it didn't have the ergonomics, right? So when you design something for people, it often has maybe more oddities in organic flow, but it doesn't look as beautiful as like a geometric, what they claim, like you said, the geometric grotesque or modern buildings. But it works for people because it's made for people. And I think from my career perspective, like I was born an artist and I was constantly writing and drawing and sketching and thinking of storytelling. And capitalism turned me into a designer. It was like, okay, I'm an artist. Like, how do I make money in capitalistic world? It's like, okay, become a designer and get into marketing and learn how to use that in a professional way. And that's therein lied. I started to get into the human centeredness of like, okay, as we're making things, it can't just be pretty. It can't just be an expression. Art is an expression of yourself put into the world. Design isn't. It's problem solving, and you have to address it that way. And I think Don Norman does a good job of helping us. And that big wrap up that he has at the end of his book, where he says, "Look, if you're a designer, you're in the you have the power to change the world," and that always inspired me in a big way. I love that.
Well, great. Well, now it's time to segue to our wild card round. So we have a randomizer prompt as we're transitioning in, and then we're going to respond to it. So these are a lot of fun. So they're just that little sprinkle of mix up of our content.
Okay.
All right.
Here we go.
The wheel.
Let's see what we get. Oh, we got this one again. Okay. We're post what one
Again.
That happens. Randomness. What are you going to do? Sometimes you get the same prompt twice. It does happen. What came to my mind immediately? One more. This would be bold. I'm drawing a blank. Anyone else coming? Anyone that got a first instinct or a first thing that came to their mind?
I mean, design. If we're taking the cover and turning that into a poster, the word design is the only word there. That's what I would say. Boom. Put that real big, right in bold. If you're making a poster and you're getting to play with it, that's where you can maybe pick a different word that you put in bold.
I think the idea, obviously the idea is the thing. I feel like especially the first edition of this book, not this revision, but the first one without the signifiers, I would do things because products, right? That's kind of like, so that'd be on that one. But the second book doesn't allow, the revision is now has more general visual communication emphasis. So maybe in that case, I would say the everyday, basically kind of the point is it's supposed to be all our life is around this. Either our affordances or signifiers we're swimming in it everywhere we go, everywhere, every time and every place. So that'd be my riff on this one.
Yeah, I always think that I always kind of read this question a little bit differently. So if this book were a poster, like I feel like if I were making a poster on this book, what word would I use? And I think the word would be understand, because I feel like the entire argument is that design should align with how people understand the world. And I feel like I'll use this example. There's something that I used to see whenever I went into like a sushi restaurant, is they would always have the little toothpicks, and their toothpicks were much different. You could actually take the toothpick and then break off the little end of it and put it on the table. And then when you put the toothpick on it, it actually raised it. So it was like a little stand for it. But if you didn't know that or didn't grow up there, you might not have known that. And I said it was one of the greatest design things that I ever saw that was almost like hidden in plain sight. And
I was going to say, yeah. Do you feel like that's the word, hidden from plain sight?
Yeah, absolutely. I go, how do people not know this? And I would tell everybody about it. And it's similar to the chopsticks. There's a similar, like there'll be a stone or something to prop it on. And it's a very similar concept. But if you don't, again, we grew up here and obviously sushi is not from here. It was brought here. But those little things, I love just having other cultures around me to make my life a little bit easier. Just even though, again, a little bit fun that I knew that you could break that off.
So reminder. So this is our schedule for season 1 of the book club. Next week we are off. So Type Thursday is every Thursday. If it's not online, it's in person. Well, next week it's in person. I know Matteo and Michael are super excited about their events, their type crits that are happening live in person in Los Angeles and Phoenix. After that, we were in with Inside Paragraphs, Cyrus Highsmith, very influential typeface designer. He wrote a little text on paragraphs, typesetting with paragraphs. Actually, I quite enjoy it. I think it's quite good. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that. And then we get back to the UX UI world with Don't Make Me Think. And then we're getting into the foundations where we're getting Elements typographic style with Bringhurst. And we got Muller Brockman for grid systems and graphic design before our next off week where we're in person. So be sure to pick up the book if you're interested in joining us and reviewing the books we're reading. The book club, you can always join us. You can sign up for our Google form, get access to our private Slack where we all hang out and talk with each other about the books between meetings, and introduce yourself. And as I said, remember, next week is Type Thursday, Los Angeles and Phoenix. The early bird tickets are out now. Definitely grab them. Matteo, Michael, any thoughts on your events? Are you excited? Who's showing? What's going on? What's the scoop? What's the story?
Oh, yeah, we've got 3 great presenters lined up over here. One of them is a veteran presenting at Type Thursday. She's presented in the past. She with a previous chapter leads when Chris Lim Chin was a chapter lead, and then Alexi, and Hector, and now me. So she's kept coming back. She sees the value of Type Thursday. That's Sarah Wong. So shout out to Sarah Wong for being so down to present at Type Thursday and being a part of this community. We'll see you guys at Typecraft in Pasadena. Thanks to our friend David Mays. Typecraft is an amazing printer. If you need any print projects, check out Typecraft. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, we're at Dialogue on March 26th as well. We actually have 4 presenters. 2 will be actually presenting simultaneously. They're going to be talking about Ray Phoenix, which is a housing development that is coming up that's very artsy, and I can't wait to learn more about it. And I have a pinstriper named Javier Cordova. He goes to Spock. And I just recently went to a letterpress in Phoenix, and it turns out they're neighbors. And so much. I love bringing this community together. Also, Jen Monroy, who used to be with AIG Arizona and has her own design agency. So it's going to be a great night of talking typography on the 26th.
Every Thursday is a Type Thursday. Don't forget that. Either online here at the Type Thursday Book Club or in person at Type Thursday Los Angeles and Phoenix right now. This has been Thomas Jockin with Matteo and Michael. Really excited to have you join us today. Thanks for having time with us, talking with us about books, and look forward to seeing you either in person next week or following week back at the book club. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Scan the QR code.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Matteo. Like reminding me. Yes, we are on the YouTube. Don't forget
like
to subscribe.
and subscribe.
Yep.